Well, football is finally back. Let's talk football. What's going on, everybody? My name is Antonio, and welcome back to the All Around Sports Podcast. Today, we are going over each and every single NFL prediction that I have. So, how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be going over each individual division. I'm going to be going over what teams I have in first and what's to all the way to teams that I have in dead last of their divisions. And then I'm going to go over a list of 5 NFL teams that are dark horse slash sleeper teams. And then lastly, I'm going to give my Super Bowl prediction for the 2024 season and my Super Bowl champion. Now, I've been going back and forth between two of them, and I ultimately ended up with this one I'm going to mention on when we get close to the end of the video. So, if you guys do enjoy this video, please be sure to smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Also, I have some very disappointing news. I was originally scheduled to do the Steelers and the Falcons game along with the Seahawks versus Broncos game. Unfortunately, I am moving into a new place this weekend, so I still have time to set up. So I will unfortunately not be able to do any games this week or until I get a set up. So I'll be making an announcement of when I'm going to do a live stream when I get to that point in time, once I have the surroundings I need to begin posting a video. So I just wanted to let you guys know before we officially get into the season. So I will be getting rid of those links to the Seahawks versus Broncos and the Steelers versus Falcons later on after I post this. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into the predictions. Starting us off with the division known as the AFC West. Now, I'm going to be going over each division from last place to first place. So, we're going to start off with the entire AFC. For the first AFC division is the AFC West. Coming in last place is, of course, the Donkeys, the Denver Broncos. The Broncos, although they are relatively better than they were, they still got a rookie quarterback, which is going to be very hard to grow into going into the season. So the Broncos, Sean Payton is their coach, and he's highly overrated. And Bo Nix, we don't know what's going to happen with him. We don't know if his offense is going to be good. We don't know if it's going to be bad. But the Broncos, I see coming in dead last. The Chargers, on the other hand, I have coming in at number 3 because Jim Harbaugh is finally back in the NFL. But man, am I hyped that he's returning. I've been waiting a long time to say that. But anyways, the Chargers, they are a big question mark because I do see potential coming out of this team. I do see a lot of potential, but it'll all depend on the coaching culture because new teams, if they get a new culture, it takes them a while to progress. I would not be surprised if they took some time to progress. But in second place, I got the Raiders. The Raiders, they are increasingly better than they were the past year. They got a defense that got Christian Wilkins and also along with Max Crosby. This defense is going to be legitimately scary because they got an offense that is decent, not great, but decent. All they need Gardner Minshew to be is decent, and they could go anywhere. Gardner Minshew can single-handedly get them to the playoffs because in areas that he has been in, he's been a load of places. They've needed him to be was very decent. They didn't need him to be really great, but they didn't need him to be really good. But I could see the Raiders coming in second place in the division because of what the weapons they have around them. You got Devontae Adams, you got Michael Gallup, you got Brock Bowers, Michael Mayers. You got loads of weapons to surround him with, and I'm very excited to see what the Raiders can do. And then number one, no surprise here, the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, it had to be the Chiefs because who else would it be? Because the Chiefs, they are seeking, of course, history to go for the historic three-peat, which is very rare in today's sporting world and has never happened in the NFL. I would not be surprised if it did because the Chiefs are just that good. And they've truly proven that they are inevitable no matter what. Kind of like Thanos, if you ask me. But, anyways, that is my prediction for the AFC West. Now we jump down to the AFC East. After many things happened, this is going to be a highly anticipated year. But starting off in last place, no surprise here, the New England Patriots, the once great dynasty, now one of the world's biggest laughing stocks, once again as they were before Tom Brady. Which this is ultimately the cause because they had Bill Belichick, they let him go, and they brought in Jared Mayo. It's gonna take him a while to adapt to the league. The Patriots are just hot garbage right now, especially after trading their best player Matthew Judon, which I'll get into later. But the Patriots, they are just not ahead of any other team. They're just not ahead of anyone. And I can see them easily going 0-17. I can easily see that. But then in third place is the Jets. I am not buying the hype. I am not buying it. I am not buying this hype whatsoever because it's the Jets. It's not teams like the Cowboys or the Steelers or the 49ers or maybe even now the Patriots that are sorry garbage now. They're the Jets, one of the most terrible, mediocre, irrelevant franchises in NFL history. And the last time they even won a Super Bowl was when they had an old man named Joe Namath as their quarterback. I mean, I'm not buying this hype. Aaron Rodgers, he got hurt in 4 snaps. Four. 4 snaps, and he got hurt instantly. This, I am not buying the hype. I have to see it first to believe it. And until I see it, this is where I'm putting them because I'm not buying the hype. I am not buying it one bit. Excuse my language there, but it's true. But, anyways, second place, I got the Bills. I wanted to put them in first, but I don't think they're ahead of the team I'm about to mention next. The Bills, they are really good. They have won 4 straight division titles. But I think this is going to be a down year for the Bills because they're without Stephon Diggs, they're without Gabe Davis. They still got guys in there like uh, Dawson Knox. They still got Dalton Kincaid. They still got James Cook. They add on not Marquise Hollywood, Marcus Valdez Scantling, also along with Chase Claypool, and also along with Keon Coleman. I do expect to improve, but I don't see them ahead of the Dolphins, who I have at number one, because the Dolphins, even though the Buffalo Bills have had their number the last few years, I don't see it because the Dolphins need to win their division. It's an absolute must because they apparently can't play in cold weather. And if you can't play in cold weather, you're not going to get past the first round. So the Dolphins, they have to win the division in order for us to see them going any further. And I think that's what they're going to do. Even though Odell Beckham Jr. is out for the first 4 games of the season, I do expect him to make a fast, quick return. So we'll see. We'll, of course, wait and see. But their defense is really good. Their offense is heavily stacked in speed. But of course, we will have to wait and see what happens. But the Dolphins, I got winning this division. Next up is the AFC South. The South is relatively interesting, and I right now think it's better than the AFC North, just from an offensive perspective. But at last place, I got the Tennessee Titans. I hate to do this to the Titans, but it's true. The Titans, although they went really good in the offseason by getting guys like L'Jarius Sneed and also along with Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley, I just don't see them ahead of any other of the division opponents, including the Colts, the Jags, and the Texans. I don't see them ahead of any of them. And I could be very wrong, but until I see it, this is where I'm putting them. Because Will Levis, he still's got a lot to prove to the National Football League. So I'm not full on buying what they're bringing out just yet. But in third place, I got the Colts, which was one of the few big surprises of last year. They almost made the playoffs if it wasn't for the Texans, which I'll be discussing later. But this Colts team is amazing. They got Anthony Richardson and they got loads of weapons around them. They got Michael Pittman Jr., also along with Jeremiah Woods, who is sadly injured right now. Hopefully that guy gets a fast recovery. And they also got Jonathan Taylor. This team is very sneaky. And they got a defense that has DeForest Buckner along with Latia Latu and many other pieces on this defense. But this is going to be a very big season for the Colts. And I'm going to I'll get to it later, but I'm going to go over my dark horse team. So this team could very likely be in there. But next up is the Jacksonville Jaguars in second place. The Jags, they are really, really good. They are amazing. They got a great offensive weapons around them. They got Gabe Davis now from the Bills, as I mentioned earlier. They also got out there and got Brian Thomas Jr. in the draft. They also went out there and got Eric Armstead, which I was pretty surprised on how wide the Niners let him go. I mean, I wouldn't let him go because he's that big of an X factor. But anyways, the Jaguars are really good, but I can see them being a sneaky contender because their defense was amazing last year. It was mainly primarily the injuries that led to the Jaguars' downfall last year. So, of course, we'll wait and see. But that means number one is the Houston Texans, one of the biggest surprises from last season, just absolutely transforming in a mere snap of my fingers. And this was a big shock. The Texans first got my attention when they beat the Bills. That was when they first got my attention. But then, not only did they go 3-13-1 a season ago, to then transform into 10-7, win a playoff game at home, win their division. I mean, that's probably the fastest rebuild in NFL history. And man, were the Jaguars shocked about that. But anyways, the Texans, they're a sneaky contender because the Texans, they are right now pretty much unstoppable. They got Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, they got Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, loads of weapons all around. And the defense, I love their defense. They got Will Anderson Jr., they got guys, loads of pieces. Derek Stingley Jr., they got Caden Bullock, I believe is his name. And man, that brother is going to be a good rookie pick. I believe he's got a lot of potential. But the Texans, I do see winning this division. But their road is not going to be that easy. They have to face teams beyond their facing. They got to go against the Ravens. They got to go against their division rivals twice. They got to go against the NFC North. They got to go against the entire AFC East. This is going to be a very, very hard schedule for the Houston Texans. And this could be really, really come back to bite them in their butt. But I still see them winning the division until further notice. Next up is the AFC North. In the AFC North, this one is relatively interesting because there's every single team in this division was over 500 last year for the first division to do it in NFL history. So we all expect the same thing, right? Not for me. Well, I'll get to that in a second. But coming in last place, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, hold on with me about this. Russell Wilson was officially named the starter, who has been trash the last 2 years. He was a part of a Denver Broncos team that was awful. And this team is not even anywhere near as bad as the Broncos. But he's one of the two most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL, right there with Justin Fields. He's been sacked 100 times. Guess how many times Justin Fields has been sacked? 99 times. And after the performance of Russell Wilson in the preseason, I think that the Steelers are regretting signing that guy. The Steelers, this could likely be the season that they have a losing season. The streak has been alive for 17 years under Mike Tomlin, but I think it's going to come to an end. And their schedule is not going to be that easy. You got to go against teams that are very hard teams. You got to face the Falcons, you got to face the Donkeys, you got to face the Colts, Cowboys, Jets, Raiders. You got loads of teams, including your division rivals twice and also along with the Eagles and the Chiefs. This is a gut punch. That last 8 game stretch is a gut punch because their bye week comes in week 9. It doesn't come in anywhere in that 8 game gauntlet. So the defense is amazing. I will admit that. But other than that, their offense has been garbage for years. They have been garbage ever since Big Ben left. And Arthur Smith is not going to turn that around. I'm sorry to disappoint Steeler fans, but it's true. Arthur Smith is not going to turn around the Steelers' offensive struggles until proven otherwise. But in third place, I got the Browns. The Cleveland Browns, they are relatively good, but it all depends on Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson can perform at the way he did in Houston, I think he could be really sneaky. The Browns could be really sneaky. But even if they don't, they still got a few backup quarterbacks in there in case something bad does happen. Like they got Tyler Huntley from the Ravens, also along with Jameis Winston and DTR, which we saw a lot of potential in DTR, who actually beat the Steelers last year, which I was surprised about. But other than that, the Browns, I just see ahead of the Steelers right now. Their defense is amazing. They got the reigning defensive player of the year in Myles Garrett. They got a great defense, and I just don't see a way that the Steelers are going to go any higher than last place ahead of the Browns. But then in second place, I've debated between the two. I'm ultimately going to end up with the Ravens because the Ravens, they lost a load of major pieces going into the offseason. They lost their defensive coordinator, which I'll get into when I go over my team in just a few moments. And I will also be going on, and then also the Ravens lost multiple defensive weapons. They lost Patrick Queen, they lost Jadavian Clowney, they lost multiple pieces on their defense. But they did go out there and get some more. They went out there and got Nate Wiggins in the draft. They got guys like TJ Tampa in the draft as well, which I see a lot of potential in. But other than that, the Ravens are coming in second. And number one, Cincinnati Bengals, because Joe Burrow is back. And Joe Burrow is the ultimate kryptonite at the moment to Kansas City. If there's anyone that can beat Kansas City, it's the Bengals. Because even though they were not as great last year, Jake Browning actually performed very, very well under that offense, which I was surprised about. But Zach Taylor has created a team that can perform well under any quarterback, even if Joe Burrow's out. Which I do, I do hope that Joe Burrow stays healthy throughout the entire season. But their path's not going to be easy. But I have the Bengals winning their division at number one, and that wraps up the AFC. Now to the NFC. Starting us off in the NFC West. Now, in last place, I got the Cardinals. Easy as butter. Because the Cardinals, they've been getting too much hype on this guy, Marvin Harrison Jr. Can we calm down on that, brother? Can we calm down? It's not like he's Jerry Rice or anything, because The Cardinals are the Cardinals. And until Kyler Murray has proven to us that he can get past the first round, and until he can prove that he can stay healthy, I don't see the Cardinals going any higher. He can get injured in an easy snap because that's how bad the Cardinals are. And Jonathan Gannon is a terrible head coach, which we'll see what happens with the Cardinals. I'm not going to get too far deep into it because they're that terrible. All right. But in third place is the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams. This one is an interesting situation because they went out there, got a few weapons in draft and free agency, but they lost their Hall of Famer, Aaron Donald.
And it cost him. No! That 15-yard line. He's not happy about being escorted out of
the stadium. A few moments later.
Which will be a big growing pain, which is why I see him in third place. You just lost Ernest Jones to the Tennessee Titans about a day ago. And that trade pretty much concealed their spot in third because their defense is good, but we still need to see what Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk can do in that defense. Now, I do expect the Rams to be good because they're always a thorn in somebody's side. And here's the thing, and I'll get to this in just a second, but we'll see what happens. But the Rams, I see coming in third. In second place, you got the Seattle Seahawks, my team. I'm not rocking it right now, but I was just at work a little while ago, so this is what I had to wear. But the Seahawks, this team is exciting. They went out there and got a new head coach in Mike Macdonald, which I love the idea of bringing him in. One of the best young defensive minds in the game today. And I love it because the primary reason he got signed was because of the whooping he did on the 49ers on Christmas. But this is ultimately a really good situation for the Seahawks because their offense is stacked. You got guys on there, which unfortunately Jake Westover didn't make the roster. Hopefully he can get on. Hopefully he performs somewhere else. But other than that, this offense is amazing. You got DK Metcalf, JSN, Tyler Lockett, K9, Kenny McIntosh, Charbonnet, AJ Barner, the rookie, and you also got Noah Fant. This team has potential. And their defense, it's only going to get better. It's going to get better under this new squad. And I know they just lost Darrell Taylor, which was a little bit of a factor. But this is a very good sign for the Seahawks moving in the right direction. Boye Mafe was a big shock last year. He led the Seahawks in sacks, which I only see him progressing even higher than he did last year. But that's why I have the Seahawks coming in second, which leaves in number one the 49ers that lost in the Super Bowl again. Niners got to stop doing that because I was even pulling for them that time as a Seahawks fan. But the 49ers, this is an honest situation. This is a do or die, now or never, because the 49ers, they need to finish it this year. They need to because the NFC is only getting more difficult, and there are teams rising left and right, and their schedule is not as easy as people think. They got one of the hardest, if not one of the hardest schedules in the National Football League right now. They got to face the Jets in week 1. They got to face the Rams twice, then the Seahawks twice, the Chiefs, Cowboys, which they always seem to beat them down. Then they also got to face the Buccaneers, if they're any good, from last year. They got to face the Packers. They got to face the Bills, Dolphins, and Lions. That is going to be a very difficult task, which I'm not putting the Niners lower than my team, the Seahawks, because I'm reasonable. I'm not like a Cowboy fan that smashes TVs wherever I go. primarily when they lose in the playoffs. But other than that, I'm not like Cowboy fans. I'm reasonable. But that's my NFC West. But man, it's going to be a harder division than people think. Next up, speaking of the Cowboys, the NFC East. The East is going to be interesting, but in fourth place, no surprise here, the New York Giants, because they are just atrocious. Daniel Jones is not the guy. That is clear and obvious. I hope Drew Lock gets the start because Daniel Jones, he's just hot garbage. That's what he is. Daniel Jones is hot garbage. But other than that, the Giants, even though Malik Neighbors is another good receiver, they don't have a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback. So if the Giants don't have a quarterback, they're going to come in last place without a doubt. But in third place, I got the Commanders, which still need to get their name changed, by the way. But the Commanders, this one is interesting because the Commanders, they are really sneaky than people think. Now, we could see another thing like the Texans, what they were last year when Caleb Williams was over with the number 1 pick and Jaden Daniels was the number 2 pick, but I'll get into that later. They've got a relatively good team. They got Bobby Wagner in there. They got Jonathan Allen. They got Frankie Louvu. They got multiple good pieces. And I think this team could be potentially sneaky. But in second place is the Dallas Cowboys. Pretty obvious here. Because the Cowboys, they're not ahead of the Eagles. Because they apparently don't know how to go all in. We repeat, the Dallas Cowboys are all in this year. Actually, they look more all out than they do all in. But anyways, the Cowboys, the fact is they are just, I don't know what, okay? I don't know what, because this is how trash they are. Although they did just sign CeeDee Lamb an extension, that's not going to change a dang thing. Because the Cowboys, the only good receivers that they have are CeeDee Lamb, which they got re-signed, and Jake Ferguson. That's it. Brandon Cooks, he's been somewhat of a mediocre receiver everywhere he's gone. And then only other receiver you've got on there is everyone named Jalen. 3 guys named Jalen. I don't know the last names, but it's tricky. But their defense, man, did they lose a lot of weapons. They lost loads of pieces. They lost Darren Armstrong. They lost Jonathan Hankins. They lost Vander Esch that had to retire. And Stephon Gilmore that most recently went to the Vikings, which is somewhat good. But this is a very hard situation for the Cowboys. But of course, number 1 is the Philadelphia Eagles. Because the Eagles, the fact is, they're the division winner regardless. Because number 1, there's never been a back-to-back division winner in a long time in the NFC East. That's number 1. Number 2, the Eagles know how to draft, Cowboys. I mean, they went, you don't know how to draft. And yet this Eagles team knows how to draft better than you. I mean, this is just flat out ridiculous on how bad the Cowboys are at drafting. They're just atrocious at drafting. But the Eagles, they are going to be relatively sneaky. I have a lot of faith in Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He kind of gives me vibes of Bobby Wagner. So hopefully that goes well. But that's my prediction for the NFC East. Next up is the NFC South. One of the easiest divisions to win. But the NFC South, of course, last place, Carolina, no surprise there, because we all know what happened to Bryce Young last year. Although I do expect them to get better, it's not going to ultimately change their fate because they're a last place team. Bryce Young is still growing into the league, but That's why I have them last place. I'm not going to get too far into them because but then third place is the New Orleans Saints. Even though we have questions about their offense, their defense has the potential to get them even higher than where I currently have them. But their offense still has a lot of questions, which I have to see it first, but they got some good weapons around them. I have a lot of faith, more faith in the Saints than I do last year, but this is going to be a competitive division between the three teams up at the top. In second place, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I had them originally winning the division, but I swapped it, and I'll go over that in just a second. The Buccaneers, the fact is Baker Mayfield still has a lot to prove. He still needs to get to that NFC Championship game like he has to, because he didn't do it with Cleveland. He's got a better chance in Tampa Bay than he did in Cleveland. So the Buccaneers, they're really still really good. And I wouldn't be surprised if they won the division again because somehow they know how to beat NFC South teams. But number one in the division winner is the Atlanta Falcons. I originally had the Buccaneers, as I stated, but I swapped it because of the moves that they recently made. The Falcons made a big time move by going out there and getting Matthew Judon, which really wanted out of New England. And then they also got Justin Simmons, which this team's going to be scary. I'm just going to say that right now. I have a lot of faith in Kirk Cousins that he'll transform this team. Maybe not into a Super Bowl contender, but at least to win the NFC South. But do I have them ahead of teams like the Niners? Heck no. Do I have them ahead of teams like the Packers or the Lions? Heck no to that too. They can easily win their division. It's right there for the taking. And they don't have Arthur Smith there anymore, which he's only going to do worse in Pittsburgh, as I mentioned earlier. But that's my prediction for the NFC South. And the last division to predict, the NFC North. The North is really interesting this year. But in fourth place, I have the Vikings. I originally had them in third, but I swapped it down because of their injury to J.J. McCarthy. Unfortunately, his injury is a lot worse than we thought. So hopefully that guy recovers soon. Hopefully he gets better soon. And hopefully he can return healthy. But other than that, the Vikings, they are really good. But Sam Darnold throwing him the football, he's not much. But at number 3, I got the Chicago Bears. A team that could easily win their division. But of course, we still need to wait and see. Their offense is relatively better. But now we got the rumors of spreading about Micah Parsons going to the Bears, which that could happen because clearly Micah Parsons is not going to win a Super Bowl in Dallas. That's a clear fact. But the Bears, I have at number 3 until they actually prove themselves. At number 2, I got the Packers. The Packers, even though they were relatively better than last year, I do have them just missing the division by a smidge because the Lions are a little bit better than the Packers. Jordan Love still needs to grow into that guy. He still needs to prove his worth. But other than that, that means the Lions coming in first place. Now, the Lions. This was an interesting situation. They went out there and got loads of pieces. They got DJ Reader, which I was surprised the Bengals let him go, which the Bengals are probably going to regret that move. But other than that, that's my division predictions. Now, to get into my top 5 sleeper teams and / dark horse teams. So before I do this, I'm going to list them straight up and I'm going to talk about each one of them. So as the 5 sleeper teams, I've got the Chargers, Bears, Raiders, Colts, and Seahawks. Now, of course, as a Seahawks fan, you probably might have seen this coming. But the Chargers, this one's really interesting because they are really sneaky. As I mentioned earlier, Jim Harbaugh is coming in. He could ultimately transform him in a mere snap. But we have to wait and see what's going to happen. Next up, the Bears. They could be sneaky. but I need to see it first. But they got lots of potential because they got Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, and also along with DJ Moore as their top 3 receivers. Also along with DeAndre Swift and Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet. But other than that, next up is the Raiders, as I mentioned earlier. Their defense is pretty much really good, and their offense is decent, but that's all they pretty much need them to be. But then number 2, the Colts, as I mentioned earlier, if Anthony Richardson can stay healthy, I can see it happening. And then the Seahawks, when people underestimate them, they normally tend to seem to do better. So we'll of course wait and see. But now for my Super Bowl prediction. My Super Bowl prediction. I've been going back and forth. But for the NFC side, I have the Lions. Because the Lions, they were so close last year. They were so close. But they just missed it by a hair. And the Lions, they got a lot of potential this year. But ultimately, I can see the Lions overtaking the NFC because the Niners, they just don't know how to beat Kansas City. But other than that, the team of the AFC, it's not the Chiefs, because it is very hard to pull the three-peat, and I need to see it first in order to believe it. I have the Houston Texans. That's right. I'm putting them in here. Excuse me. My goodness. I got so hard there. But anyway, the Texans. This team ultimately transformed. And I originally had the Bengals in here. But we still got questions about Joe Burrow and his health. But CJ Stroud, if this guy can do what he did last year, this team can absolutely make it there. Because they're right now one of the most feared teams in the NFL. Other than, of course, the Chiefs and the Bengals. This is going to be a very big season. But the ultimate Super Bowl champion that I have, after 50 years, the Detroit Lions. The Lions, I have winning it because the city of Detroit has waited for a championship. The last time they had a championship come their way was with the Detroit Tigers, their baseball team. That was the last time we saw it. If their football team could do this, it would be for the first time since the Super Bowl era, all the way back before the Super Bowl era started. For the first time, they would win. And I have them doing so because they are ultimately a really good team this year. But let me know in the comments what you guys think down in the comment section below. Who do you think is going to win each division? And what standings do you think are going to happen for each? Who do you think are your 5 teams that are sleeper/dark horse teams? Your Super Bowl prediction and your Super Bowl champion. Let me know down in the comment section below. And if you say Cowboys is Super Bowl champion, you're dead wrong. I'm sorry. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll catch you all during the NFL season. So long for now.